Just 6 games on tonight's slate for daily fantasy baseball, but that does not prevent it from being a, frankly, kind of bizarre slate because it feels like a blast from the past with guys like Kyle Hendricks making his debut tonight, Carlos Carrasco facing him. We got Julio Teheran potentially back in the menu for tonight. It's a weird slate for sure, and I think that's going to lead to a somewhat unique approach where my second favorite pitcher is actually a value play, which is pretty rare, as you know. So we're going to break down what to do with the 6-game main slate, how to handle all those veterans on the bump for tonight, and get you ready for some MLB DFS. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, here to break down Thursday's 6-game main slate with lock set for 6:40 p.m. Eastern for today. Again, 6:40 p.m. Eastern is the lock time for tonight's slate, so get those lineups in early before the 6:40 p.m. Eastern lock. The one weather note for tonight is that it is another great night for pitching at Wrigley Field. Winds are in from center at 13 miles per hour. I would downgrade hitters in a big way there. I'm not going to get to the pitchers. We'll talk about why and things to watch, but downgrade offense is big time at Wrigley Field, effectively making one of the 5 games for tonight a non-factor. I'm not using a pitcher. I refuse to use offense there, so we effectively have a 5-game slate for tonight. We'll dive in and outline what that means and who actually does grade out well in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, you name it, you can find us there. While you're there, if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating as well if you're watching on YouTube, where this show is also available. Hit subscribe on the FanDuel YouTube page and also leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those of you who do so each and every day. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. First online real money wager only, $10 deposit required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In Connecticut, 1-888-7777 or visit CCP. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. In Wyoming and Kansas, 1-800-522-4700 or in Kansas, ksgamblinghelp.com. Louisiana is 1-877-770-STOP. In Massachusetts, gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. In Maryland, mdgamblinghelp.org. And in New York, 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In West Virginia, go to 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Pitching preview for this Thursday main slate. Logan Gilbert comes in with the highest salary on FanDuel. His salary is $10,600, followed by Lucas Giolito facing the Tigers at $10,000 flat. Aaron Nola, $97,000, with Kyle Gibson and JP Sears as the others at $8,000 or higher. So as you can see, they're pretty slim pickings, and the value play I like is actually not in that list. So we'll talk about that in a second. But first, Gilbert is, I think, the no-brainer top option for today. He is facing the A's. I think he's due for positive regression. I would not be shocked if he gets that positive regression tonight. It's a plus matchup for righty here for Gilbert. 89 WRC plus for the A's against righties right now on the current active roster. 25% strikeout rate. And the strikeouts are the aspect for Gilbert that have been there. Across 9 starts since he added a splitter this year, he has a 31% strikeout rate, and he's been phenomenal. Despite that, his ERA is still a bit lacking at 3.81. Definitely not bad, but it's not great. That could be due to the hard contact he has allowed, and it's been too high. But his skill interactive ERA is 3.05. His expected ERA, which does account for all that hard contact, is 3.09. Both those numbers say he should be better than his results so far. And I buy those numbers more than I buy an ERA across 9 starts. We have seen the upside for Gilbert. He's had 9 strikeouts last time out. He had 10 strikeouts, a couple starts before that. and he had 6+ in all but one start so far. I have Gilbert projected for 7.6 strikeouts tonight. Nobody else is above 6.3 for me. So I am more than happy to load up on him here, and he is my top guy for a good margin. So I would say, personally, even accounting for salary, Gilbert is in a tier of his own for tonight. Now, among all the other pitching options across tonight's slate, my second favorite pitcher, as mentioned, is actually value play with a salary of $7,800. So we'll talk about him here, then we'll get to my third ranked pitcher after that. The value play is Clark Schmidt of the Yankees. He's facing the Orioles tonight. I hate that matchup. I have had a lot of fun betting the Orioles recently, especially last night. The night before, not as much, but like the Orioles a lot. So I don't want to go at them, but I do think it makes sense to do that here. Schmidt, earlier in the year, was struggling mightily with hard contact, and he still is to an extent. But 6 starts ago, he started to use more sinkers, likely because of the batted ball issues, trying to cut back on that. And it definitely has made a positive impact on Schmidt. His fly ball rate in that 6-start sample is down to 32%. His hard hit rate allowed is 41%, which is still not ideal, but it's also not a nightmare. His ERA in this time is 4.70, so clearly the results have not swung his way yet, but the peripherals are a lot better, and Schmidt is still getting strikeouts, which we want for DFS. He has a 28% strikeout rate in this time, which ranks second behind Gilbert on the main slate in each guy's most relevant sample. As mentioned, don't like the matchup. Orioles have a 107 WRC plus against righties. They don't strike out a whole lot either. This is really about Schmidt and what he's doing. The hope is that if he pitches well, the Yankees will let him go deeper in the game. They've done that a couple times so far. He had a 97 pitch outing and a 93 pitch outing. So he does have shorter ones, but hopefully if he's effective, they'll let him stay out there a bit longer, especially given what happened. I think it was right to take Cortez out last night, but the bullpen definitely did not do themselves any favors. I have Schmidt projected for 6.3 strikeouts tonight. That is also second behind Gilbert there. His salary is $7,800, which means you can do whatever you want at hitter. I like that a lot. I'm going to rank him second behind Gilbert. So to me, even after accounting for salary, I would go Gilbert 1, Schmidt 2 for tonight. The third pitcher is Lucas Giolito, who I like pretty equally to Schmidt, but Giolito's salary is $10,000, whereas Schmidt's is $78,000. So that's why Giolito's third. But I do like him a decent amount and think there is some upside here for sure. He gets the Tigers tonight, which definitely helps matters. They have an 83 WRC plus against righties. They have no power in this lineup right now, an average strikeout rate. It's a very good spot for a righty. I think Giolito, as mentioned, could be on the verge of an uptick here because 6 starts ago, he increased his slider usage, and since then his strike rate is actually down from where it was before that, but his swinging strike rate is 13.1%. It's a very nice number, and he's had some spike games in there too. That's something he's done while facing the Rays twice, along with the Twins in the same stretch. Not a lot of fun matchups in there, and his ERA is 3.26. So the results are already there, but I think the peripherals may look even better here in the very near future. That's the pitch in favor of Giolito. We maybe have not seen his best stuff as of yet, and even without his fully realized potential, he's still been getting good results. So I think he's a rock solid option. I'm very okay being high in him. I just prefer Schmidt over him. So top pitching options for tonight, Gilbert 1, Schmidt 2, Giolito 3. We'll talk about the Wrigley game and things to watch. Before that, though, let's talk about some stacks and Julio Teheran back in our lives unofficially for tonight. They have not officially announced him because I don't think they signed to a major league deal, but I think he has to pass his physical still. So this could change, but as of right now, expectation is it's Teheran starting for against the Brewers, or they're starting for the Brewers tonight against the Giants. So I want to stack the Giants for tonight. The Brewers kind of need length. They are in a long stretch where they have no off days, so it's kind of hard to justify a bullpen day there. And, you know, it's still Teheran. We saw him last in the majors back in 2020. Things didn't go all that well back then. 10.05 ERA across 31 and 1/3 innings. Haven't seen the big league since then, but he has been in AAA so far this year. He's in AAA at the Padres. He had an opt-out clause in his contract, and he took that opt-out clause, and the Brewers signed him for depth. But Teheran opted out despite struggling quite a bit in AAA. Across 8 starts, he had a 5.63 ERA. His xFIP was 5.32. He was getting strikeouts, but the rest of the data was pretty concerning. Again, based on what we saw from Tehran last time he was in the majors, this probably shouldn't be a huge shock. So that leads to stacking the Giants here. The Giants are a good offense once you take them out of San Francisco. They have a 113 WRC plus against righties and a 192 ISO despite playing half those games in a black hole for offense. So I am very high on the Giants for tonight. I think they are the top stack by a good margin. Feel great about them. And I do want to be very, very central focused on them for tonight. I think the lefties benefit most for a couple reasons. The first one is Tehran has always struggled against lefties, but also they get the biggest park factor upgrade in leaving San Francisco. So Lamont Wade Jr., Michael Conforto, Mike Yastrzemski all get big boosts here. If Blake Sable plays too, I could see being okay with that. So I think in general, feeling pretty good about this Giants team, especially the lefties, but everyone in this lineup looks pretty good. So Giants, to me, top stack of the main slate. Number 2 is the Phillies, who have not been good against lefties so far this year. Their WRC plus is 79, but their ISO is 171, and that is a number that stabilizes more quickly. So I think we can feel good about going with the Phillies for tonight. They're facing Dylan Dodd, who's coming back up again for the Braves, and he's struggled in both the minors and the majors thus far. In 3 starts in the big leagues, his skill interactive ERA is 5.73. In AAA, his xFIP is 4.85. He hasn't been getting a lot of strikeouts and not getting enough ground balls. Now, Dodd, in fairness, is still in his age 25 season. He's turning 25 next month. So he has a lot of time to turn this around. But we're talking about just tonight, and I don't think he's there just yet. And some of those struggles for Dodd have come against low-level teams. He faced the Marlins last week, and they had just 1 strikeout across 28 batters faced. So the Phillies, I think, should be able to up their numbers against lefties, and that may begin tonight. So the Phillies, to me, are a good stack, not a great stack like the Giants, but a good stack, and one I feel pretty solid about here personally. It also does help that a lot of their lefties can hit lefties. Kyle Schwarber strikes out way too much against lefties, but when he makes contact, that thing goes a long ways. Bryce Harper making really good contact right now. He's always been fine against lefties. Only 2 home runs so far, but he's running. His batted ball numbers are great. So I think we can feel good about those two, even against a lefty. And then the righties get a boost too. Alec Boehm has no power against righties, but does have some against lefties, stuff like that. So I actually probably want to build around the lefties personally here in Schwarber and Harper, but the righties do get a boost here, given the matchup with Dodd. Finally, one more night, the Mariners are in play. I know it's gone well 2 of the nights, but you're probably still sick of stacking them. So, this one personally for stacking the Mariners is more about the bullpen they'll face than the previous ones were. Those ones were solid, I thought, because of the starting pitching. I still think they're a good play despite facing a better pitcher for today. That pitcher is JP Sears, who I think is pretty good. He has a 25% strikeout rate this year with a 12.3% swinging strike rate. And that means the strikeout rate probably will stay where it's at. Sears doesn't walk guys, so his skill interactive ERA is 4.01. And I don't think that number is fully off base. But he still has a 4.99 ERA with a 4.57 expected ERA. The reason those numbers are high is mostly because he lets up a ton of fly balls. Sears' fly ball rate allowed this year is 57%, and there is enough hard contact in there too for it to be an issue. So the Mariners can score runs against him, and they can obviously score against this bullpen. So I think it makes a lot of sense. You may be sick of stacking them for the 4th consecutive night, but I think they're in the top 3 for me once again for a reason. So the Mariners, probably because of the A's bullpen, are in the stacking discussion once again for today. I talked about this at the end of yesterday's show, but I wanted to emphasize it here. I think Julio Rodriguez is about to go on an epic kind of tear because since they moved him out of the leadoff spot, he has a 66% hard hit rate with a 35 balls in play. His barrel rate is 11.5%. Now, that has not turned into power as of yet. So I called a double dong last night, and he had, I think, 2 singles, so not quite the same thing. But I want to be high on him, and I think that this will turn into power here very soon. So I want to be high on Rodriguez both in the short term and the long term. I think he's a focal point once again for tonight, given that he can steal bases too. So Julio Rodriguez, I think, destined to go on a tear here really soon. Going to keep on banging that drum until it eventually does wind up happening. Things to watch for today. The weather at Wrigley, as mentioned, great for pitching, but I don't think either pitcher is suited for DFS right now. Carlos Carrasco, just one start for him since coming off the IL, 80 pitches there. I'm projecting him for 90 tonight, which is not quite enough to draw me in given the profile he has had recently. Other side is Kyle Hendricks, which is fun to see him back, but didn't get a ton of pitch length in his rehab starts. I think his longest was like 59 or so. So I've got him projected for 70 pitches. So I can't really get there. So weather perspective, great for pitching. I don't think these two guys are conducive to it themselves. So to me, we'll stick with those top three of Gilbert, Schmidt, and Giolito. I think the Yankees are right up there with the top three for stacking. They're facing Kyle Gibson, who has been trimming back on his slider usage recently, which is going to lead to more balls in play. And the Yankees offense has been hitting the ball much better recently. I like them quite a bit in this spot. I think that they are in the same tier as the Phillies and the Mariners for stacking. The White Sox are the other team I'd consider stacking, and I'd be pretty high on them personally. They're facing Alex Faedo, who pitched well in the minors and has suppressed hard contact in a small sample in the majors, but lots of fly balls, not a ton of strikeouts. So if you're facing a more high upside offense, one that had more legit power, I'd be higher on the White Sox. But I think given the Yankees probably have higher upside, the Phillies, the Mariners probably do too. That's why they're down here. The matchup itself is pretty good, but the White Sox still a team I'm willing to go to for tonight. Let's finish up here with the dinger calls for Thursday night, and we're going to begin things in the boring section with a guy I'm pretty sure I've not had in this section yet. And that's been a bummer. But Bryce Harper, 2 home runs so far this year, coming off that elbow injury. 2 home runs, 83 or so plate appearances. Not the best rate, but his hard contact is still there, still barreling the ball. He's just walking a lot. And that makes it hard to hit dingers. But facing a lefty for tonight, I like the lefty on lefty matchup. It's just kind of fun to me. So we'll go with Bryce Harper as the boring home run call for today. The fun one, I want to go to Lamont Wade. Really was kind of surprised pulling up his profile to see how much hard contact he has made this year, but it makes sense. He's playing in San Francisco that can kind of mute a lot of or mask a lot of good batted ball data. Michael Conforto, same thing. But I do think that Wade is pretty fun. So we're going to go with Bryce Harper and Lamont Wade Jr. as the home run calls for today. That's all we got here on the solo shot for this Thursday slate. Again, a little bit unique slate, effectively a 5-game slate, despite there being 6 games on it. I like a value play, which is pretty odd. I think the stacks are kind of fun too. So I'm excited about tonight's slate, despite being effectively just a 5-game offering. Do not forget to subscribe to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts, or subscribe over on the FanDuel YouTube page. We appreciate those of you who have done so already. And again, if you like what you hear, leave us a thumbs up on YouTube or a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes. JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow for a robust Friday slate. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.